Good evening. It is 7 o'clock, January 12th. I'd like to call our first meeting of the year to order. And we will start with the opening prayer, which will be led this evening by Pastor Jim Case. Pastor Case.
From the Tallmadge Association of Ministers, God bless all of you in the year ahead. Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, it is a new day, it is a new direction, it's a new focus. And we ask that you'll be with us, with the decisions that need to be made. The focus on helping others is secure and allowing us to be one with another and helping them to know that you are the way. We ask you to keep us safe, be with our safety forces, watching over them in their time of helping others. Now we ask that you'll bless this meeting, the decisions that are made, so to help us to become who you wish us to be in your service to others. We ask this in the name of our risen Lord. Amen.
Amen. And please remain standing, and the mayor will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Case. Let's move to item 3, roll call.
Becky Allman.
Here.
Jonathan Bolus.
Here.
Adam Bozick.
Here.
Mary Gutman.
Here.
Carol Kilway.
Here.
Dennis Lowry.
Here.
Craig Ciesick.
Here.
All are present this evening. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. Let's go to item 4, correcting and adopting the previous meeting minutes of December 8th, 2022. Can I have a
Mr.
motion? Mrs. Kilway?
I would like to make a motion to make a correction. It's just a spelling correction, and it is on page 8. To only have one mistake on 18 pages, I think this is phenomenal. But it's actually, there's a word missing on page 8. It's line 1, 2, 3, 4, line 5, where I say, well, this is not going to go with, well, I'm not going to with, it should be withdraw my motion. The word draw is missing in it.
Do we need a motion on that, or can we just make a note? She made it. Do you need a second and a vote? Can I have a second? Mr. Ciesick, any other discussion? Can we have a vote or roll call, Mrs. Burton, on the amendment?
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
All right, so the minutes are amended. Could I have a motion now to adopt those minutes?
Mr. Lowry,
Mrs.
I
Kilway?
move to adopt the amended meeting minutes of 12/8 of 22.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Bozick, second. Any more additional discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, Mrs. Burton?
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes. All right. Item 5, financial reports. Fire and EMS transfer or fund transfer in the amount of $100,000. Street maintenance and repair fund transfer in the amount of $120,775. And a transfer from the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant to the general fund in the amount of $189,448 to council on 12/29/22. The appropriation report, fund report, and revenue report for the period ending 12/31/22 to council on 1/6/23. December financial reports to council on 1/6/23. Tallmadge Recreation Center profit and loss report for the period ending 12/31/22 to council on 1/6/23. Income tax comparisons for the period ending 12/31/22 to council on 1/6/23. Consolidated investment portfolio for the period ending 12/31/22 to council on 1/6/23. Income tax by source report for the month of December to council on 1/6/23. Revenue comparisons for major funds for the period ending 12/31/22 to council on 1/6/23. And the Maca Park summary for 2022. Can I have a motion to accept these, the financial reports as provided?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Cisak, Mr. Bozick, any discussion on those? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Gilbride, for all that hard work, along with your other year-end things. So, Mrs. Burton, please call the roll.
Mary Gutman,
Yes.
Carol Kilway,
Yes.
Dennis Lowry,
Yes.
Craig Ciesick,
Yes.
Becky Allman,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Adam Bozick,
Yes.
Financial reports are accepted. Item 6, public hearings. We have none this evening. Item 7, community input. This is the point in our council meeting where if somebody in the audience would like to speak to council, address council on anything that is not on our agenda, you can do that at this time, and you have up to 2 minutes. So please just come to the microphone and introduce yourself and give your address. And
Hello, my name is Tasha Appel, and I live at 222 Northwest Avenue, Apartment E in Tallmadge.
go ahead.
Okay. So my name is Tasha Appel, and I've lived in Tallmadge for about a year and a half now. I love this city, and I love being part of this community, which is why I am opening up this conversation. With Roe v. Wade being overturned, the duty to protect reproductive rights is now falling to state and local governments such as yourself. We ask that you begin formal discussion with the police department about abortion allegations and investigations that are inevitable. We ask that you devise a plan on how to minimize the utilization of limited city resources to investigate these abortion allegations. We ask that you deprioritize abortion investigations. We ask what protocols will be created for abortion hearsay allegations. For instance, a neighbor calls and claims the person next door had an abortion. Does the city spend funds to send an officer to the residents to investigate, and if so, to what extent would they investigate? Would they perform a physical exam, an internal exam? Are medical records going to be requested to look into a he said, she said, they said situation? Will medical records become part of that specific case, and if so, will those then become public record? And will HIPAA laws just be ignored? All of the aforementioned are a gross injustice to privacy and a severe violation of human rights. I appreciate the discussion I had with the law director today and realize while you don't have the answers at this time, I request that you be proactive in protecting your citizens' reproductive rights and privacy and prioritize formal discussions on abortion and what directives the city of Tallmadge is going to implement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've just, thank you, appreciate that. I've just been notified that as of now, our live streaming is not live, is not working. So, so we're going to continue, obviously, with our meeting. That was just an FYI for our, yeah. Okay. So, well, he could hear what I just said, right? Okay.
It's going.
All right. Well, we had a resident just contact us saying that it was not. So thank you very much. Okay, little hiccup there.
Where's Fairlawn Gig?
Item 8, agenda additions. We have, every year at this meeting, we adopt our calendar, and Mrs. Burton provided that to us. Basically, we always meet the second and fourth Thursday, unless noted, with a break, not too often. On the calendar you were provided, spring break would be on March 23rd. That meeting would not take place. October 26th being Thursday, Halloween. Normally, we move that meeting Last year, we made that meeting on a Wednesday. Where is it? Oh, I'm sorry, it's in the red there. So that meeting has been moved to Wednesday, the 25th. And then we have one meeting in November, and we take Thanksgiving off. The first meeting in December, and we take the Christmas meeting off, but we are asking to schedule tentatively the 21st of December, just if needed, if we had a budget issue or whatever, something needed done that late in the year. So if everyone is okay with the calendar, I would entertain a motion to accept that.
So moved.
Mr. Cisak?
Second.
Mr. Bozick, and then any discussion on the calendar? Mrs. Kilway?
I just had a question and maybe a thought. We have March 23rd scheduled off for spring break, but in notation, it does say that Tallmadge and Cornerstone spring break is the week of the 27th. So is there a reason why we're even why we're scheduling ourselves off for that week, since it wouldn't impact anyone that has kids?
I think it's just been tradition.
Okay.
But if council would like to meet, I'm good with meeting. We have to check with the administration. So we have not obviously discussed this.
Right. That's why I'm opening it
yeah.
open for discussion. That's why I'm just asking if there's, since, the Tallmadge spring break is the next week.
I'm good with whatever council wants to do.
And so am I. I'm just.
If you all do not plan on having conflicts that would prevent you from meeting on the 23rd, I would say let's meet on the 23rd. But
I'm okay with meeting on the 23rd.
council administration, I know it's a little bit out. Is that a problem?
I'm tentative,
Okay.
but I'll figure something out with the assistant law director if need be.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I'm okay with meeting that day as well, but, if we don't have any pending major legislation at that point, the only thing I was thinking about was any of the public hearings that may be taking place, would that push back that third reading, dependent on where that falls?
It does move it. It would move it to the first meeting in April, but even with a development project, I don't think missing a meeting in March. A March meeting has never been an issue in terms of P&Z that I can remember.
Okay.
But, so you want to go ahead and just still keep it off? Okay. Consensus from head nods
That's fine.
is that we will not meet on March 23rd. So with that, is there any more discussion on the calendar? Motion to accept it as printed.
So moved.
Mr. Bozick.
Second.
Mrs. Allman. Any more discussion? Mrs. Burton, please call the roll.
Carol Kilway,
Yes.
Dennis Lowry,
Yes.
Craig Ciesick,
Yes.
Becky Allman,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Thank you. Calendar's been adopted. Okay, now I would like you to look at the agenda under our additions. Richardson Trust Fund, we have both Carol and Craig have offered to stay in those positions. The Firefighters Dependents Fund is the same. The two from the fire department, are they new members or existing members, Mrs. Burton?
South is
Dowler
existing.
has done it before.
Okay.
Brian White is new.
Okay, Brian White is new. Chip Billows is willing to continue to serve. On the Planning and Zoning Commission, the mayor's appointment that we just affirmed is Bob Costco. I would note that that should be for a 4-year term and not a 3-year term. In the Veterans Committee, we are basically, I think, updating those members. The mayor has his appointments, along with Service Director Rohr, and council has 2 appointments. So Terry Fitzpatrick is a Tallmadge resident and a veteran and involved in the organization. And Adam is a veteran and serves on council. So those would be my recommendations for those 2. So we went over these this way because Mrs. Raber said that if there are no changes, we can accept an emotion to accept all of these as presented with one motion. So are there any changes? No. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move to adopt these, or to approve these individuals as stated.
Second,
Second.
Mr. Cisak, any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Just under my appointment for the Planning and Zoning, Bob Costco, let me first talk about Jerry Taylor. Jerry Taylor served that commission for 25 years. You can see every business around town over the past 25 years, his hands, his work that he did on that commission is on those projects, and he did a great job for us. So I'm very happy for Jerry that he served that many years as a volunteer. It's an unpaid position for 25 years, and I commend him for all his work. Bob Costco, I think a lot of you know him. He's retired from Summit Racing, and part of his job at Summit Racing, he's project managers, and he presented in front of Planning and Zoning quite often, and he was part of the site work and the construction of all of the projects that Summit Racing performed. So Bob's a resident of Tallmadge, has been for a long time, and he'll be a great asset to the Planning and Zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Anything else? Hearing none, Mrs. Burton?
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolas.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone in our community stepping up to serve. We're pretty fortunate there. Let's move on to item 9, reports of administrative officers. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome back, Council. Happy New Year to all, and looking forward a great year coming up. Let me start off with Planning and Zoning. Call to your attention the email that Helene had sent out going over the 2022 accomplishments and the amount of work that they did in that department. That was emailed to all the council. She's done a phenomenal job in that, and it just lists a lot of the economic development stuff that has gone on, which she's been helping me with on the economic development side of it, and all the commercial and development. So make sure you guys read that. Good job to Helene on that. The basement, it's the old Beef O'Brady's out there in the JED, is changing their franchise to the basement franchise. And they do have we have a ribbon cutting on the 17th at 11 o'clock, and I think a lot of you have responded to that, that you will be attending. Mod Wash ribbon cutting is February 3rd at 11 o'clock. That's the car wash at 105 West Avenue. Also on Captain McGee and Sergeant Quillen were sworn in on December 29th here in council chambers. We had to do it, we did not have a council meeting, otherwise I would have had it at the council meeting, but I know most of you attended that, so, and they are busy at their new jobs, doing a great job. The Tallmadge Expo is this year at the Tallmadge Rec Center. That will be on April 15th. That's a Saturday, so mark that down. You'll see more coming out. I'm just giving you a heads up. It's quite a ways out, but we will have a city booth there and things at the rec center that council usually is involved in that. And let me end with my favorite project that's trying to wrap up is as you can see up in there in the picture there, that's the Fire Station number 2. We still have Visqueen on the doors, but let me talk about the inside of the building. We are just about ready to open up. The generator was set a week ago. The gas meter is supposed to be set tomorrow. Once we get the emergency generator up and functional, basically we can move in if we had garage doors. The garage door situation is still being worked on by legal department, and the temporary doors for the 4 big doors, the indoors, front and back, temporary doors from the contractor is being installed. It's a roll-up door, but those are only temporary. They're coming at the end of this month, and as soon as those are on, then we'll be able to open up. My goal is, I hope I don't have to install those, and I'm being optimistic, because I think they made some good headway from the firm out of North Carolina to get the permanent doors up here. But we still have the temporary doors on the way up here. Outside of that, it's, as soon as we can get them in, and we'll demo the other building and finish the site work on that side. That's pretty much end of the report.
Any questions for the mayor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, is that something that we would need to kind of discuss, any legal disputes?
For the doors?
For the doors, or any other pending litigation that we may have in executive session?
Pending litigation would be discussed in executive session. We don't have any pending litigation at this point with
Okay.
regard to these doors.
All right, thank you.
There is other litigation, though, surrounding the doors that is not filed by us.
Understood.
Contractor to contractor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Let's move to Director of Administration, Director of Safety, Dr. Cooper.
Good evening, everyone. Just one report that I'll make this evening regarding the compensation study that's underway. It's been underway for some months. Mr. Shabesta of Clemens Nelson Associates met with some of the city administration and Mr. Bolus on January 5th, which was rescheduled from December 29th due to an illness. Mr. Shabasta presented some results of a wage survey, some information developed from the position analysis questionnaires submitted to them by city employees, ideas for what he calls a point factor manual that would be used to establish new wage ranges for various categories of employees, and draft position descriptions. No draft plan was presented, but Clemens Nelson's plans to make a presentation to council once they have a final report. Mr. Shabasta's plan is to take our feedback from that meeting and return with more specific recommendations for revisions to the city's general approach to compensating employees, although no specific date was provided at the meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that would be the end of my report.
Any questions for Dr. Cooper? Thank you. It's Director of Public Service, Mr. Rohr.
Good evening. I'd like to request the passage of ordinances 1 through 17, if that's okay this evening. I appreciate that. For the month of December in zoning, we had a total of 10 permits issued for the month. Code violations were 36, 4 of which were riparian. In the cemetery, we had 4 total burials, 3 full and 1 cremains. You can see the spaces we have left. I want to make a note that there are no spaces that exist next to each other, so you can't buy 2 together anymore, except in section 700, and that is the area that's in red. So if you can see the gazebo up there in the right and come down to the red area, that's the only spot that you can get side-by-side spaces left. The blue squares is something we're working on. There's something called a cremation park. Next slide. So I don't know if anybody has seen these. You can do 4 cremains in each one of those spots, and those go back one slide. Those blue areas are small, so we could end up possibly laying those out if need be, and doing a cremation park in those 2 spots to get more spaces if needed. Moving on. The parks, you can see there, the membership is 7,241, and the visits was 18,000. I do want to state that starting January 1, we are actually back into pre-COVID numbers at the rec center with visitations. We've been up over 1,000 for about 4 days in a row, so that's good stuff. We're moving forward. Ritchie Hall has been reopened December 3rd, just in time. The community center had a pipe break on December 26th, and it's out probably till at least March 1st, if not longer. I just want to mention that the next meeting, I'm probably going to come and ask for reappropriations due to the insurance. We are up above 200,000 right now in insurance claims on the damage from that pipe that broke. So just letting everybody know. A lot of work that's going to go into it, a lot of rehab. The new park sign at Howe Road Park is there. That's been done. Membership at the Macca Pool, February 15th, goes on sale to residents, March 15th to non-residents. We had the tree lighting in December, great day, 200 folks showed up. Want to thank the Tallmadge High School with the a cappella singers, Tallmadge Historical Society. They provided refreshments at the Old Town Hall. And Jim Forsythe, who knows Santa Claus, got him to come to that event, so that was nice. Street Department, there's 6.5 tons of street sweepings was removed in the month. Over 3,000 hours in leaf removal over the whole leaf season. And we are on average with about 16,000 cubic yards of leaves removed. That's great. The snowstorm over Christmas, 310 hours was used in snow plowing and treating the roads over that 4-day period. And then January 8th, just in time, the winter shift started. They started last Sunday, so that was January 8th, and that's a 24-hour coverage that we have throughout the winter months. And a couple catch basins were repaired on Kensington, and that's the picture next to them. Guys did a nice job on those. I go over this every time. That's the snowplow routes. The blue are the primary that we stay on those, so we get a chance to get to the secondary. The secondary is a road that zips through the allotments that gets everybody to the primary. The allotment roads, not that they're not important, but those are last to be treated and last to be hit. There again, we just can't spend a lot of time because a lot of times we can't get off the mains. So just so everybody's aware of that. And in the utility department, 3 water breaks over the month, one on Bierce, one on Greenbrier, and one on Southeast right before you hit Mogador, right by the railroad tracks there. For the year, we had 16, so you see we're just one below the average. No sewer backups, 5,000 linear feet of sewer jetting was done, 5,000 linear feet of televising was done. 20 valves were exercised, that's great. The EPA likes to see that. They like to know that our water system's working. If we have to shut something off, that everything's working. So we do about 20 a month. So we exercise. We have actually a valve machine that actually does that for us. And then root control, just something so everybody knows, we are actually treating the inside of manholes. That's a manhole, as well as the sanitary sewer lines with it's technically a root prohibitor. So it keeps the roots from penetrating into the lines, which causes a lot of backups. It lasts for about 3 years with the residual. The company comes back in and retreats, and it's safe for the environment. And the city of Akron is aware of this because they're, again, keep in mind they treat the sewer, so we don't want to get billed for this product. And this is a safe product that Akron agrees to as well. And that ends my report, unless there's any questions.
I have 2, Mr. Rohr. One is long-term plan for the cemetery. Is there additional land that we could buy, or when it's filled up, it's just filled up? I mean, what is the city's plan?
Great topic of discussion.
Thanks. Well, that's good. That's good. That's why we're all here, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Columbarium.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we still have 2 more columbariums to add in. But that's why we're going that cremation. Those lands are small and tight. There's some easements. But as far as adjoining land, there's nothing that joins that or abuts that property.
Okay.
But I'm up for discussion, and I'm actually also going to present a landscape plan for the cemetery, believe it or not. So, and that's coming.
And then the second one is, since the community center took such a devastating hit, and we're in there already spending a lot of money, are we doing any other additional upgrades
Glad you bring that up.
may have been needed in the past?
It's a great time to upgrade, and I've asked Ms. Simons to look at what she has in the budget and come back with what she would like to see removed from the budget to add that money to the insurance money to upgrade anything.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Kilway.
Yes, I just want to thank Mr. Rohr and the rest of the administration for the street lights on Southeast Avenue. I took a drive down the other night. It was beautiful. It really was. Thank you so much. It's the ARPA funds that funded it.
That's correct.
But you guys know that that's been something I've been trying to get done for a long time now, so thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I think
And-
we should probably do that to a couple other main streets that come off the circle because it's just a safety issue.
Mr. Bolus.
Yes. Back in the fall, we had a discussion about an auction for the Summit DD building for the materials inside. Is there any update on that?
No update on that. We have the auction companies ready to go when we're ready to move forward with that, but there is no update on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor.
just to talk a little bit more about the community center. So what had to be done there, all the vinyl tile had to be removed and all the carpet. So the upgrades that they're looking at, what style of flooring to go back down? Should it be the vinyl planks that are much nicer and easier to clean and easier to maintain? Or do you just put the old vinyl tile back down, the 12 by 12 squares? That type of upgrade. The insurance company will replace in kind what was there. The upgrades that they're working on is how much above what the insurance is willing to pay.
Okay.
Then we'll have to come back to council for that too.
Got it.
Mr. Lauer.
Anything, Mr. Bolus?
One more question. Based on the damages in the community center, were there any, how many customers were impacted in terms of, did we assess customer impact? Did we offer refunds? Was it looking for alternate sites for them to try to help them out? What was kind of our response to that, if there were any impacts?
Yeah, there was impacts. We were able to move a lot of them over to Richie's. The one that's killing me, though, there was a wedding, March 11th. And unfortunately, that's a rough call, so we did offer a full reimbursement. And we offered to give her another date at half cost, but I don't know how easy that is for her. There again, I'm sure those invitations have been sent, but that place is trashed. I mean, there's no drywall 2 feet up, the ceiling's gone, the ceiling's gone because the evaporation, it's soaked up. Those are ceiling tiles, so that much water, the ceiling tile soaked it up. So every single ceiling tile has to be removed and replaced. So it's in bad shape. And the counters in the kitchen are gone. They also took on so much water that they wicked. So the wood expanded. There's not a counter left in there. So it's a total rehab.
Mr. Bose.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Gilbert.
No, I just was going to say that, since we have within the rec department, we're really trying to advertise and promote that as a place for weddings. This would be a great time where if we need to put some extra money into it in order to upgrade it to wedding caliber would be fantastic at this point.
I concur. I mean, this is the time. Bad luck's
Time to
good
do
luck,
it,
I guess.
right.
So
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Rohr, I know you and I have talked briefly when we did a tour of the DD building about kind of looking at the future use of either that building or that site. Do we, and I don't know what the agreement is with the Summit County Library, but do we look at potentially not remodeling that facility and using that land for some other use? If we're talking about burials, maybe that's an option, maybe it gets utilized for something else, but just, there's possibilities there, and maybe this is a time to look at, all of our options. We have a lot of building space that we're looking at between the DD building. You're looking for more space in the cemetery. We have the community center now that has this issue. Just kind of kicking around these ideas of, what do we have as an asset, and what can we potentially get out of all three, or from 3 down to 1 even. So just a thought that we should probably maybe sit down as a administration, maybe a couple council, Parks and Rec, your street department guys who do the burials, and kind of figure out, if that's something that would be feasible.
I'm open for the discussion.
Great.
Thanks. Anything else? As always, thank you, Mr. Rohr.
Thank you.
Let's move to Mrs. Gilbride, Director of Finance.
Thank you. Good evening. We had a great financial year in 2020. I know there was talk about the economy and how it's doing. However, our income tax here in Tallmadge went gangbusters again this year, which I did not anticipate, obviously, by the amount that we came in over my revenue estimates. Glad that we got to that point. It's, I think, enabling us, as we discussed during the budget process, to do some extra projects and put some extra money into the budget for some things due to those overages in income tax collections. Also, all the departments did a really great job keeping within their budget and using their savings and also contributing to our growth as a city. I have nothing else specific to report on, but I will be glad to answer any questions.
So, Mrs. Gilbride, can you just give us your opinion, what you think? How are things going to shake out post-COVID with people working from home? And then again, so the impact on us is good to some point, but if we have 300, 400 people working from home at Summit Racing, I mean, how do you think that's going to shake out?
Well, I mean, we've already seen part of that shakeout this year. That transition has happened for those businesses. We've also seen, as I think I've stated before, we've also seen we now get income tax here from First Energy. I think us being a adjacent suburb to a major metropolitan city that used to hold all those businesses, we are able to weather that. The same being said, we issued over almost $500,000 in income tax refunds this year, which last year was like $159,000. So I think you're going to see it balance out, but I'm pretty confident. I feel confident that this year we saw the majority of that impact on us. I think what we have right now to look at is just if the economy does go into a recession and we start seeing some of these businesses fall back, but we also have additional businesses coming in the JED and those kind of areas. So I think overall, I expect us to maintain a pretty consistent level. I don't expect us to continue to see the growth we did over the last 2 years. There were definitely some withholdings that were one-time bumps that I was able to identify from businesses. I believe a lot of them were faced with some, during COVID, with higher profits than expected, so they were distributing those out as bonuses to employees, bonuses, and those kind of things. So there were some major bumps, but I think overall, we've seen the majority of the impact. I think for most of our businesses, they made that transition and they went ahead and transitioned that withholding at that time. The source that concerns me the most is just how rapidly our net profit tax has grown over the last couple of years. And with the recession coming, those net profits, I think, we'll see that portion of our tax. That's going to be the one that's going to compact, I believe, a little more.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Mr.
Mr.
Bozak?
President, I do have a question for Finance Director. And perhaps this was a typo that nobody caught, but in the income tax collection report down at the bottom of the page, you show $12,077,000 as the budget estimate. It says 2020 in there. Should that be 2022? Or is that?
That's just, yeah, it's just a typo.
Okay, all right, that's why I wanted to make sure, but, so essentially, we're roughly 4 million over for last year from what we budgeted. Is that a fair assessment?
You have to add the 12 million and the 1 point. So that's, the 12 million is how much we estimated in the general fund. Then there was an additional 1.38. So I was at about 13.4 million.
Okay.
And we came in at 16.3.
Okay, so of that, kind of moving forward into this year, because that carries over, obviously, of the projects that we've already earmarked from last year's budget, do we have others that we chose not to do that we could bring back up and start those as new projects for this year?
That would be a discussion to be had at the administrative level. We are just finishing the year, so we haven't gotten to
Understood.
that point
Yes, I
this year.
Looking ahead, is that something the administration is hoping to maybe accomplish this year, or?
Well, keep in mind, during the budget process, there were items that were not budgeted that are big-ticket items that we have to think about moving forward, such as the Summit DD building. Do I rehab it at $7 million? Do I demo it at $1 million? Does the grant come in? We don't know that yet. We applied for a grant for the demo of that 1 year ago, and we are promised it's coming, we'll know the result, and so that's why we've sort of been sitting there on that. And then we also had the personnel study that we said is not funded at all.
And that was my thought, was the DD building is what jumped in
Yeah,
my mind
sure.
with knowing, again, like we had just talked about with Mr. Rohr about potential projects and growth within the city for the future, where does that put us? And it sounds like you guys are considering that or kicking those ideas around. Obviously, we just started the year and, can't jump in it right away, but I just wanted to make sure like that was something that
We're very fortunate to have this conversation.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great thing to have. Have those extra funds available for these projects. So congratulations to you guys for creating that environment. So thank you.
Thanks. Anything else? Thank you, Mrs. Gilbride. Let's move to our Director of Law, Mrs. Raber.
Thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to let you know about a few items that'll be coming up. More information will be coming out and be pushed out to the public and to the council as well. But just to kind of save the date, we are going to have on February the 8th a co-sponsored event by myself and County Council Christine Hyam and the Summit County Public Health Opiate and Addiction Task Force, a forum and discussion about the opioid addiction crisis and just more awareness, training on naloxone and things like that. So that will be coming up. We
Do you have a location for that?
here in
okay.
Chambers.
Thank you.
And then we also have coming up on March 7th at our Recreation Center, a co-sponsored event with the Summit County Sheriff and the Summit County Prosecutor's Office and our County Council, Christine Hyam and myself, a women's self-defense class that's free to the public. And on April 28th, I have invited the Ohio Ethics Commission to come and do another training. Susan Willicke has done that in the past for us, and unfortunately with COVID, we hadn't been able to host her live. So in lieu of sitting through an online training, she's actually a very good speaker and interesting to listen to. We'll be hosting her as an internal training session on April 28th. So you, again, will get all more information about that. That'll be the morning of the 28th. And we will be inviting other public entities to join us as well.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Any questions for Mrs. Raber? Thanks for all you do. All right, let's get to work. Item 10, reports of standing committees. We're going to start with planning and zoning. Mrs. Kilway, I just want to make you aware, if you weren't, that Mr. Testa is in the audience
Yes, I did
this
see him
evening.
here. Yes, thank
So
you.
take it away.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call planning and zoning to order. Everyone is in attendance this evening. We do have ordinance 2022-85, which is amended. It has planning and zoning recommends approval by a vote of 5-0. And so this is amending ordinance 74-2016, approving and granting a conditional zoning certificate for Village of Town Center Phase 4, and amending partial Phase 1 to applicant Testa Enterprises, Inc. on behalf of owner VTC Development LLC for parcel number 6000310 North Avenue and parcels numbers 60104666 and 601047 of 100 North Avenue. If the applicant would like to come up and say a little bit about this, I know there was a public hearing at Planning and Zoning, and there was a lot of discussion, so if you'd like to maybe go through a little bit of that, because I think I'm the only council member that was there.
Sure. I'm Joel Testa, president of Testa Companies, 2335 Second Street.
Thank you.
So this is doing two things. So this is the last piece of our development next door. Originally contemplated back in 2013.
Yes.
When we did our master plan, we had a mixed-use building, which was the first building that went up. The first struggle that we've had is we have, the majority of the retail in that building, I'm sure you've noticed, has been vacant. About 20,000 square feet of space that is losing about $500,000 a year in revenue. So in the 4 years we have not been able to lease it up, it's lost $2 million for the project, which is pretty detrimental. It can't continue that way either. So one of the things that we've looked at is what else could go in there. And from retail, we looked at office space. Well, since COVID, the office and retail spaces have both struggled significantly, so there's no market for either one that we've been able to determine. On the flip side, we have a long waiting list for senior housing. As we looked at the last parcel over different iterations of the plan had been contemplated to be different things. The original submission in 2013 was support buildings for housing. And at one time, we had assumed that the old school building would potentially be a housing units. And then we had an office building that was shown in later iterations there, and a medical office building as prior to the SUMA building, we thought we'd have maybe some multiple medical office spaces. And so again, that one sits vacant too. So as we look at the site and how do we finish up this project and what's in demand, the one issue that has come up is parking concerns. And so again, as we look at all the typical uses for the site, retail, which exists now, has the highest requirement for parking from the zoning standpoint. And so if we were to fill those spaces, and be fortunate enough to fill it, we'd have a significant problem, more so than we have now when that building sits vacant. Likewise, if we were to build an MOB, which again has a high parking demand on that building, which would be the only other probable thing that could go there, we would greatly increase the parking demand on the site. So the thing that takes the least amount of parking is senior housing, and affordable senior housing even takes less because we're typically dealing with seniors that are making 60% of median or less, and not all of our residents drive. And we provide transportation for those that don't. So what we've proposed is to convert the retail to senior housing and to take that last building pad and build a three-story senior housing project there, tying it into what already exists. And that application will go in February, should you approve it, the zoning change, and if it gets awarded, it'll be a project that'll start sometime next year.
Okay. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did say that there's a little bit of urgency in order to get these senior housing credits because this needs to be approved in order for you to get your application in a certain time period?
Correct. So the application goes in February. February 9th, I think, is the deadline for
Okay.
Ohio Housing Finance Agency, and we have to have appropriate zoning for that. Part of the urgency is, and it's our fault, we had assumed because the zoning was different in 2013, your code was different, and so we had a mixed-use zoning code that included senior housing for this site. Because of the way the conditional use works, each project that we bring in, we have to come back through zoning again, and now the code's changed. We put together our application for OFA with the assumption that we did not need to come back through planning and zoning, that we already had, coverage. And after we met with the administration and looked for our letters of support, I guess, we realized, no, we have to go through this process, and it was at the last minute to apply, so that's why the urgency.
Okay. And also, like you had stated, this plan has really changed significantly since 2013 when you brought it to us, and there was to be quite a bit of office / mixed-use space on the first floor, especially what is towards, I'm turning around backwards, but what's away from the street, okay?
Yes.
And one of the reasons why you cannot get like certain, I don't know, restaurants or anything like that is because of the garages that were built to the back of it. You cannot vent out according to the fire department. Is that correct?
No,
So you
that really hasn't been an issue for anybody. The problems that we faced for any potential tenant that we talked to, one was the orientation of the building. So, in order to justify the development costs and the acquisition costs of that site, we had to develop quite a bit on it to make it work. And so that building had to go perpendicular to the street.
Right.
Most retailers want to be parallel to the street, so they have the exposure. So exposure's been a big concern for most of the retailers we talked about. But what I mentioned in planning and zoning, the one thing, we are not retail developers. We are primarily residential and office and medical developers. We honestly didn't know what we didn't know when it comes to mixed-use inner-city retail. And what we found out is that major national retailers, or franchises, which typically are the people that can afford to build out a new construction retail space, which is expensive, do not want mixed use.
Right.
They want a critical mass. And if you look at most retail plazas, there's a consistent design trend that you see no matter where you go, whether it's a mall or a strip plaza. Certain types of businesses always tend to be by certain types of businesses, and they either want a business that's always on an outlot parcel typically won't go inline retail. They won't be, amongst other retailers on either side of them. Most retailers won't go in a mixed-use development unless it's in a market like a Chicago or New York where they have no choice. So what we're left with is small, local retailers that don't have these design standards that they adhere to nationally. And typically, those small local retailers can't afford to build out a new construction space or the rents that would come with the landlord financing the build-out. So that's really been the struggle, is that this product just does not work in this market.
Okay. Have you, and I know COVID has had issues with retail, commercial, just in general with the whole world at this point in time. But I just really have a concern about putting more senior housing in there, and then you want to add another, how many units is that again in the third story?
The third-story building
Or
is,
the three-story building that you're proposing?
no, the three-story building has 39 units in it.
And how big are those units, each one? How many square feet?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I think our units usually, they're one-bedroom units, and I think the one-bedrooms are usually around 720 square feet typically.
Okay, so very small apartments then.
Not really. I mean, they're not much smaller than the market rate apartments that we have. But I will tell you that one of the reasons that we're doing it is that we consistently have about 50 people on our waiting list for these. And I think right now we have about 35. There's consistently more demand in Tallmadge for affordable, particularly ours. I can't speak for everybody else, but we typically carry a waiting list. And that waiting list, the average person on that waiting list, it takes them 12 to 18 months to get on it. So, when we're looking at the market and we say, okay, well, for 4 years we've sat vacant, there clearly is not a demand for retail or office space because, we could have given the space away and people wouldn't take it. On the flip side, what we do have a demand for is a pent-up demand of waiting list for senior housing. So, it's the highest and best use. If you were to ask an appraiser to look at the property, that's what would come back as the appropriate highest and best use for it.
Okay, so how do you think that if we were to grant this, and we were to, basically, that whole building is going to be residential except for 3 commercial units
Correct.
on that big building, how is that going to affect those 3 businesses?
Well, I think positively, because right now, like I said, if you were to do anything else with that retail space, you're going to have a significant parking problem. And that's the only thing that negatively impacts those commercial businesses is the struggle for parking. And they're not struggling for business. All of them are doing well. And I think when we look at, from an economic development standpoint, the biggest economic demand generator in that development is SUMA. And so what feeds SUMA is our senior residents. Of everything that we've got in that neighborhood, having that walkability, having that baby boom generation have easy access to healthcare. So, by putting seniors in there, we're helping the one entity that brings the most dollars into the city from an income tax standpoint.
Okay, but then you're also asking us to forego any potential income tax dollars for all this office space that you're
Well,
saying you can't.
it's
you're
sat vacant
saying
for
you
4
can't do,
years.
But there's buildings, there's businesses going in at other places all over the city and the county.
Yeah,
So-
there are, and some of it's the restrictions on the design, some of it's the perpendicular to the street, some of it's mixed use. And listen, if we could have done anything to not lose $2 million to this point, we would have. Same thing with the property sitting vacant on the back. Right now, none of that's generating any tax dollars, for the city. So that's all the things that we took into account is, okay, we're sitting with this, what do we do? How do we turn it around for the city? How do we,
That back lot kind of needs cleaned up, too.
What's that?
The back lot where you're looking to put
the last phase, yep.
It needs
absolutely.
cleaned up. There's a big pile of dirt there.
Yeah.
It does need
Yeah,
cleaned
well,
up.
and it's, it's the last phase of a construction site, so it was waiting for this development, and that's, typically what happens. We
Yeah.
need to finish it.
And we don't expect a pandemic to hit in the middle of it, right?
We hope not.
Right. Okay, council, any questions? Yes, Mr. Lowry.
I could ask 100.
I know, I hope you do.
So, but I'll be quick. First, I was the economic developer, and the mayor and I courted Mr. Testa to get rid of the rubble that was next door. And so I'm thankful. I'm thankful for the investment. I'm thankful for the investment in Tallmadge. I'm thankful for the investment in all of Summit County that Joel and his father have done, continue to do. But as you said earlier, the project did not go as planned. And you don't know what you don't know. COVID was a big hit. But Joel, what is the status of the fourth floor? Are
Yes.
those all rentals?
Yes.
But they're all market rate rentals.
All market rate rentals, all fully occupied.
And so those never became sold units.
So interestingly enough, we started doing this a couple of projects ago where we would take our market rate units and put them on the market for sale or lease. We condominiumize them. We let the market dictate what it wants it to be. And interestingly enough, 100% of these units were for lease. Nobody chose to buy them, which is interesting. The same building, half the size in Cuyahoga Falls, our Watermark building on Front Street, when we had the initial lease up, that had 12 market rate units to our 24 here, 25 here. The 6 of them were rented, 6 of them sold. Over the next 3 years, every time a rental unit would come up on the market, we would put it back out to the public and say, it's available for sale or lease, we don't care, whatever you want. The market dictates to us. And over 3 years, all of the rentals converted to home ownership, and so those units are all homeowner occupied. So it's just, for whatever reason, it's interesting but that's why we do it. We let the market decide what it wants.
So then, how many, in the 20,000 square feet on that lower level, how many units would go in there?
14. We submitted an application for 15. As of today, we decided if it's approved, we're going to take one out, so it'll be 14 units.
14, okay. And I've been trying to track down some old records. But I remember for your application with the state that Mr. Sonner, our former community development director, worked real hard and had to come up with a number of potential jobs created on that 8-acre site. And back then, the amount of income tax that he felt would be generated or could be generated. So, but I don't know what that was. I thought it was 330 to 380 jobs, but don't hold me to that because that was 10 years ago now. And so I had a call to Holly Miller at the county, thinking that they may still have a copy of that because they were involved to some degree, and I don't have it. But our wish was that because you get beat up when you're the economic developer and the mayor, and you're talking about bringing more subsidized housing into your city.
Right.
That was not a really popular discussion for us to go around town.
And that's my big concern with
But-
this point, yes.
But the offset to that was that it was senior housing, and there's a 30-year period or something, I believe, Mr. Testa, that it has to stay senior housing.
30
There's-
years.
30 years. So, which was much better than others in the past, which were only 15 years. So that, we had 30 years of security because senior housing, they're not a nuisance, and you know what I mean? We don't have a bunch of issues. And I think the fire department has confirmed that we are not making an undue number of calls there. I think that was in the, in planning and zoning. But correct me if I'm wrong, Chief. So, but the ace in the hole was, you're abating, we were abating property tax for the school district, which presently they were collecting, if they were collecting at all, as a vacant land residential value. So, yes, they don't collect for 7 years, but then they would start collecting at a commercial rate. So I believe most of that is still in the abatement period. Maybe not all of it, maybe not. Because each project was sort of different, right? So,
And the years start once the project is completed. So
right.
while it's 7 years, it's not
That didn't start. till
concrete 7 years. It's
from
7 years from the
2019 Approximately.
value increase, and then it begins.
and so then for the city, again, sometimes we forget about this. Property tax goes to school district. We get very little of that.
Right,
Income tax comes to the city.
right.
So as much as we don't want to ever hurt the school district, we need to have tunnel vision on our fiscal responsibility of the city.
Right.
And that needs to be income tax generation. But, so I believe we hit a home run with SUMA, you know, and I agree with what Mr. Testa's saying, that some of those residents feed and help them. And I probably imagine, based on what docs and nurses and everybody make, that we are probably generating as much income tax as we felt that we would have back in 2013. I mean, I don't know
In
that.
2013, that area where the SUMA building is was supposed to be a proposed medical office building. I'm looking at the plans right now.
Right.
And then in 2019, I believed, they asked for where they want to, in Phase 4, where they want to put the apartment building. It was, they came back and asked for, as you put it at MOB, a medical office building, which that would also have generated significant income tax for the city. And so now we're looking at, okay, let's just not have any economic development and put senior housing. right
Well, and so that's why,
there.
and
So that's
again,
why we need to have a serious discussion.
I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I know.
I would, as I sit here right now, I would probably be inclined to approve the number of units proposed in the 20,000 square feet, the vacant space as it exists now. But if you remember, we just, we went through the planning and zoning issue on the second ward, where the price point was going to be anywhere from $400,000 to $700,000 for 80, 90, 120 units, whatever it was on that vacant land. And the community told us loud and clear that they didn't care what the price point was. They didn't want people living that close together on small lots.
Correct.
And then, just more recently, we had a developer that wanted to build senior housing ranches.
55 and up community.
55 and up. And there's a very successful project in Greene and a very successful project in Fairlawn. And this was going to be their third location. And they decided, and again, I know that price point because my wife finished building one for her boss after he had passed. They took so much heat before they even made formal application for a product that was going to be every bit of $450,000, $500,000, that they decided not to proceed at this point on that idea. So where I'm struggling with, Mr. Testa, is I'm struggling with if I'm going to be consistent in the way I think this community has told us that they don't want people living close together on small lots, I can't imagine that they would want people to live close together in a subsidized apartment. Now, having said that, there's no one in the audience tonight to speak against that, and there was only one person in the audience from that group at the Planning and Zoning meeting, and I believe chose not to make any comments. And that, I will tell you that that is not their forte, to not make any comments. So I'm kind of perplexed, but
I can offer you my thought on that.
sure, go ahead.
I mean, this is a little different in that this development exists. This is here. So, from the mixed-use building, we're not talking about changing the structure or making it any bigger. And you have a lot that's in a development that something will be built on. And what had already been proposed, I would think, is more detrimental to anybody that would show up than the housing that we're proposing. And when you look at the neighbors that abut it, putting a medical office building there with the traffic that it generates, the activity, the noise, the trash pickups, I think is, and certainly in the original design, it was up against their property line, where this building has a parking lot between their property line and, in a residential building. I think giving all the choices of what could be on that lot, this is certainly would be the most favorable to anybody that lives around it, because we can't not develop it. And we have a right to develop it, at least if we go back to what was already approved. And when we talk about the issues of why wouldn't we, traffic and parking seem to be number one. And of course, if that's truly the issue, this is the best use. We certainly understand the economic development. We wish there was something more income generating there too, but there's not. So at the moment, we have no income, and that's, not really fiduciary to the community. But I will tell you this. We can show you countless studies, and I'm happy to bring them in, that tax credit housing, senior affordable tax credit housing, has a domino effect in the community that definitely generates tax dollars for the community. And the easiest to grasp is that we're usually bringing seniors in, they're living in homes where they've reached their useful life. They're no longer able to have disposable income to improve their homes, to remodel their homes, to expand their homes, or in some cases maintain them. So they start to fall on their property values. And when we take those people and we put them into properties that we maintain, then it frees up their homes for families that, vote for levies and have kids that go into schools and want to support our fire and EMS and are higher income earning because they're in their income earning years. So it has this major domino effect that's necessary for prudent economic development. And there's countless studies that we can show you that that's the case. But I think that's why you're not getting the opposition, is because I think this is better than anything else we could be proposing there, or what we already have the right to build.
Well, Mr. Testa, if you had said that a medical office building would be more detrimental to the residents of Highland Drive as opposed to an apartment building because of traffic and so forth. A medical office building is only going to have activity from 7 to 5, potentially.
Yeah,
An
but far
apartment
more.
building is 24 hours.
It is, but the seniors, one, they're quiet. They typically, again, not all of them are driving, so the number of cars we have there, you don't have the comings and goings all day long from seniors that you do for the patients that come into a medical facility, the employees that are there. The amount of trash that's generated out of an MOB gets picked up sometimes daily, as opposed to the seniors that, gets picked up weekly. Just all of the services and maintaining our snow crews, the amount of work that we have to do to snow plow and snow blow a medical facility versus a residential facility, because the tenants demand that there can't be more than an inch of snow on the ground for fear that their patients, could slip and fall. So everything that it takes to manage and operate that building are far more intensive than residential. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find any resident that has lived next to either and says, I choose, a commercial structure of any kind over senior apartments.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Testa.
Just a couple of questions. I'm
Yes.
glad we're not talking about a 24/7 emergency room at that location. So, as far as green space, do you have any options, or have you considered or thought about maybe some outdoor green space for the residents of the current building and then the expanded and the new construction?
Yeah, there is. I mean, we have more green space now than we had in our original plan. And if you go back to 2013, the MOB that we had was a one-story plan that was spread out across the site. And we were able to, take that to a two-story and save some green space and some landscaping and some walkways in here. Likewise, with this plan that we have now, there's a decent amount of green space around the second building. So overall, it's an improvement over what's.
Yeah, no, and I was thinking like even just like a gazebo or a gathering area or space that the tenants, the residents have an opportunity to gather in the summer or in the warm.
We haven't designed it, and that's not to say that we can't.
Yeah.
I will tell you, historically, we've done them in other projects. I mean, in Barberton, I put a bocce court in, and it's been 10 years and it's never been used once.
Yeah.
We go out there and maintain it. It's,
Yeah, I guess I'm not,
you know,
just a place for people to gather if they so choose.
absolutely, if
Well,
there's
according-
space for it, we're happy
yeah.
to do it.
According to the original plans from 2013 that I'm looking at, that space was supposed to be potential future community center and potential future community pavilion with
Right.
plenty of green space.
Yeah.
And then in 2017, you changed it to the MOB.
Right, which,
So what are the chances of you just doing the first floor of the senior housing and then going back to the original plan that was originally approved and putting in the community center and the pavilion?
well, the community center didn't get the funding, so that was part of the tax credit project. So we didn't have enough funding to build the community center there, so that project died because of funding. We came back for the MOB because at that time we were talking to Children's, who had interest in being in the office, building there, and then they subsequently did not. So each time we bring a plan, if it's not a potential plan, or it says potential whatever, which is part of our master plan, what we'd like to see, we bring a plan that's based on the reality of here's the uses or the tenants. So there's no chance that would be a non-income producing site. So somehow it has to be generated because the pro forma for the development can't allow that to just be a non-revenue, non-income producing site. And as the city, you wouldn't want that either.
Madam Chair. I'm sorry,
Mr.
Ms.
Boza,
Gill.
go ahead.
I've been patiently waiting. So.
I know, everyone is, I'm sorry.
So, Mr. Testa, thank you for being here this evening to help answer questions. So with the space on that first floor of the existing property, you'd mentioned that it does become a bit burdensome to potential small business, small retailers to go into those spaces because of the cost of build-outs for those, basically. So I guess my question is, when that property was originally proposed and built, was it discussed or was it in the plans to originally just have at least a concrete slab poured within those spaces? Or, because I know right now there's no slab in place.
There is on the east side of the building. There's not on the west side of the building. Typically, when we do what we call it, in retail, it's called a cold dark shell. So normally you'd put up the exterior walls and you don't put in the floor because you don't know what your tenant's uses are going to be. And if I put in a hair salon, I'm putting in sinks all over the place and they'd have to come in and jackhammer and bust up the floor and run plumbing underneath it. So in order for us to run our undergrounds, you leave the floor out because it's actually less expensive for them to do it later than it is for us to put in a floor that we know we have to cut up because we don't know where any of the underground utilities are going to go. On the east side of the building, there was a moisture problem on the east side because it's lower ceiling heights. And so the moisture was coming out of the ground, so we were forced to concrete that side to contain the moisture. But the west side is still gravel.
I guess I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of, it would be for, let's just say, for 80% of the retailers that we may move in there, with the exception of like a hair salon or somebody like that, they only need like a bathroom, most businesses. In the way I see that property being utilized would be more of like your insurance companies, your health benefit companies, those sort of things. Very small local type businesses that don't need a lot of bells and whistles within their space when it comes to water utilities, I guess. So kind of knowing that and knowing that it's been vacant for so long, I guess I'm just trying to think about if it was my property and I had that space, how would I generate at least some income from that space rather than having to pay the 500,000 or whatever it was you were saying per year to have that?
Losing it.
Losing that much per year. I guess, what is your build-out cost?
So typically in that space, so the rent in that space for a tenant that comes in is $16.50 a square foot. That includes a $40 a square foot build-out allowance that we give them. And again, that's one of the reasons why we don't put the floor in, is because we put in the money to put the floor in, but that way we can have complete flexibility. So our idea is, we don't want to have to be a deterrent for somebody where we chose to put the bathroom in one spot. It doesn't work for their plan, and now the space doesn't work. So we want to be as all things to all people. That $40 a square foot generally will get them their mechanical system into the building, and their exterior wall is drywalled. So they're going to spend, depending on the size of the space, they may spend another $40 a square foot finishing out the space. And so to your point, part of the challenge with office space is, if you look at the office market in Tallmadge, not a lot of people are paying $16.50 a square foot for office space, and that's completed finished space that they don't have to write a check to move into. And that's the problem. The economics just don't work as office space for new retail. And really, it's hard to make a new construction building work in today's market. I mean, all of these things, pre-COVID was a different world too. So,
Sure.
The conversation we have today is certainly different than it was, pre-COVID. But you're hard pressed to build new construction office and have a lot of small businesses that can afford the rent that a new build office costs.
Right, and I guess that's my point, is to say, if we, if you kind of had the mindset of knowing that front-facing retail space is more attractive to the larger retailers, and this is a side-facing storefront, knowing that we have smaller businesses that are going to potentially be the tenants, having that build-out cost that is so high, I mean, essentially, you're saying, additional $40 per square foot for the build-out, roughly, correct?
Yeah.
So you're pushing like 50-something dollars a square foot for a build-out over the course of how many year lease?
I know you're probably closer to $80 a square foot, 80 to 100, I would say,
Which
for the
is,
average.
which is
tenant that goes
very,
in there.
very high.
Agreed, but we don't make up those numbers.
Right.
That's
and-
the
and
cost
I'm
of the
not-
building
yes,
materials.
I understand, I'm just saying very high from a small business standpoint. I mean, I'm a small business owner, and I've been around town to kind of see a lot of spaces, and that number is just unachievable for probably almost all of our small businesses that are here in the community.
Which is why we're here asking to put seniors in there instead.
So I see where you're coming from, and I understand that point. I just feel that it's, every time we go online, we'll see these people post something about, well, why are they putting in more housing? Why are they putting in this? I wish we had this business, that business, this business. It's very centered around businesses. So you have a population that is demanding businesses, whether it be retail space, food and beverage. I think the need is there. The community wants those things. I don't necessarily hear them every day saying, man, I wish I had more senior living in the community. So, which I understand, you're probably not going to hear that, but I think that the need from the community is that, we want our restaurants, we want our, bars, we want our, sports pub, whatever it is. That's kind of the need of what this community is asking for and has been asking for.
Yeah, every community wants amenities. Every resident does.
Sure.
And that's where you want to live by. The challenge is getting the businesses to have the economics to be there. I've been in plenty of markets where they say, we want a Starbucks. And, they petition to Starbucks. Well, you don't have the demographics to get a Starbucks. We need higher density, higher per capita income. And just because, yes, we'd all like to have it there, but the reality is, it's not up to the residents, it's up to the businesses. And, we, as I said, we don't have the type of businesses that can afford those spaces, that want to be in those spaces. If they can afford them, they don't want to be there, because it's what we've learned. And I will tell you, so for new retail space, if you went out and looked at other new retail, new construction retail, you're going to spend usually around $25 to $35 a square foot for. So we're half of, and that's part of what we thought is, by doing a mixed-use building, we can spread our soft costs, our acquisition costs, our land development costs over the whole building, and that we ought to be able to bring retail, high-end, market rate, new construction retail to market significantly cheaper than they can go anywhere else. So why couldn't we attract somebody that, was going to go look at, a big retail box center where they're going to spend $32 a square foot and say, hey, come over to Village Town Center, we'll give it to you for $16. And that was our mentality going in, that we could, offer it so inexpensive. And what they came back and told us is, it doesn't matter if you gave us the space for free. It's not our model. And we don't break from our model. And we're not going into a mixed-use residential development that's got residents above it with a building that sits perpendicular to the street, even if you gave us the building for free. And so, that's why we're here. It's been an expensive learning lesson for us.
Yes, go ahead, Mrs. Scott.
Thank you, Mrs. Coy. So I have a different perspective on this because I'm a nurse case manager. I work with elderly patients in Tallmadge for the most of my day. And I will say that they are the silent voice, and their families are desperately asking for this housing, looking for affordable housing for their family members, for themselves, not knowing where to go or what to do. Exactly what you were talking about, having these big homes they can't afford to maintain. I've been in a wide variety of subsidized senior housing in different communities, and I'm in and out of this one 3 days a week, and the Watermark, and they're the nicest ones I've been in. I was shocked the first time I was in them. I think we're lucky that we have this in Tallmadge, and to be honest, I'm thrilled at the idea that our seniors are going to have this opportunity to have more of these units. I'm excited about it. I understand the economic side of wanting the businesses and how important that is financially, but providing that service for our senior citizens, for our residents, I think is equally important. And I think that financial benefit, the indirect benefit that they bring in is maybe harder to quantify right here, right now, but it exists. So it's not entirely just a, moral issue. But there is that we owe it, I think, to our senior citizens to have housing, not just, it's great that these over 55 communities that are condos that are $500,000 and they're maintenance free, but let's be real, not everybody's going to be able to put mom and dad in those. So the fact that we have this here and they're nice, and it's really nice. I mean, I would move my parents in there. I think I can support that, and I would defend that all day long to any resident who questioned why we would want to put another building on there that's people living too close together, per se. I don't know. I think I want to say thank you, too, for making those places for seniors and keeping them nice. And I hope that you continue to do that throughout the years, because I've seen older buildings where they probably started out like that, and over the years the maintenance has just not been maintained. And there's some places I've been in where like the elevator has not functioned for 4 months because they took too long to update the parts. And so I would just encourage you to keep those high standards.
I can tell you, there's been the comment subsidized housing made a couple of times tonight. This is tax credit housing, a little different than what most people think of as subsidized housing. This isn't Section 8, this isn't public housing, this isn't, and one of the things that's unique about it is because it's funded through tax credits at the state level and administered through a syndicator, the buildings have a replacement reserve account that has to be maintained for 15 years. So in this case, let's say Ohio Capital Corporation for Housing is our syndicator here. They come in and they do audits of the property, and if they decide that the roof needs to be replaced and we haven't replaced it, they take the money out of our operating, maintenance reserve account and they replace it. So different than if a private developer decides to build Section 8 housing, nobody's holding a gun to their head to say, you have to replace this, and that's when you get aging buildings that dilapidate. It's usually because there's no mandate that they have to maintain them. And that is the one nice thing about all tax credit projects, is that they do have to be kept up to a standard, and it's not our standard even. It's maintained at the state level, and they have our checking account with money that's put in there in reserve just for, for those repairs. But the other thing, and when we first came through and explained this project in 2013, and there was a couple people that said, well, this is low-income housing, this is, we're concerned about the type of person that it's going to bring into our community. And we showed them that in our average property, the average resident age is 74 or 5. And I was corrected in the planning committee meeting because it was 60-something in 2013 when we came in. Now as our boomers are aging, it's in the mid-70s. So let's just say it's 74 years old. Everybody that's in there is on Social Security. And you can make up to 60% of the current median income to live there. And at the time we did this project in 2013, I said, if you're 74, in order to make more than 60% of median income on Social Security, you had to have the last 10 years of your earning years be over $100 and some thousand. And I said, do you know how many people in Tallmadge would overqualify? How many 74-year-olds in Tallmadge overqualified to live here? There was 2 in the whole city. So it's all of your seniors. It's not just, these that we think of low-income seniors. It's every 74-year-old person in this community will qualify to live here. And to your point, it's all of our parents, our moms, it's all of our, teachers and police and fire and civil service people that, have retired, that supported our community, that, we're giving them a safe, clean, habitable place to live. From an economic development standpoint, we argue all the time that if you take 39 units and you put them in a development and spread them out, what it costs the city to run sewer and water and snow plows and trash pickup to those 39 units spread out in the suburbs versus in one building, it's far less expensive and far more profitable for a municipality to build dense housing. That's just, maybe not, people don't like to think about it that way, but it's, it's the cost of your services. The more you spread out the houses, the more it costs the city to provide your services. So.
Madam
Anyway.
Chair, I have a question for you. Are we seeking approval of this evening?
Tonight, it's just
amendment.
accepting the amendment, is amending it and accepting planning and zoning's recommendations. So we can still have, we can accept their recommendations, and we can still have more discussion, is that correct?
It has to have more discussion. It has to go
Yes.
to 3 readings.
Right.
So, yes. So
Right,
tonight
so we'll
is
not vote on it until
just
next meeting.
adopting the amendment, which just incorporates the planning and zoning recommendations.
Correct.
I was just here to listen tonight.
I know, I'm sorry.
And I had not
That's
warned him
fine,
for
though. I'm
that.
great.
I
Please.
put you on the
Not-
spot. I'm
Please
so
ask the
sorry.
questions.
There's not.
More information is better than
Sure,
not enough. So
sure.
that's
Absolutely.
why I'm really encouraging this discussion,
So
okay?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr.
Um,
Suzak.
Again, kind of going back to, outdoor access, green space for the residents and for this building. Can you tell me a little bit about why you chose to put the parking lot against the east side of the property versus maybe in front of the building?
For 2 reasons. Good urban planning, you typically try to hide the parking. So, it should go behind the building and not in front of the building. Front of the building's for retail, behind the building's for, aesthetics and good urban planning. We did that. In the original plan, the parking was out in the circle, and it was in large part because of the residents behind there. Because as we looked at the site and said, okay, can we improve on what we originally designed and got approved? And we thought, well, why wouldn't we put the parking there and push that building further away? Because the new code has, a setback and a step back requirement. So it's desirable per the code to get buildings further away from the neighbors. So that's kind of why we did it. We figured it would hide the cars, it would hide the traffic, it would hide the parking behind the building, but it would also give more of a buffer zone between, the residents behind there and front. Honestly, it doesn't matter to us. We could put it in the front too. The reality is, not a lot of those spaces will be filled by residents.
Right. Where do you anticipate the entry for the new building?
So I think, so the plan that one of the recommendations from, I want to say fire, I think, was we show at the north end of the parking lot for the new building is closed off. We did that because we're trying to maximize as many parking spots as we could get, in this plan that's designed. Their suggestion was that we open that up and let circular traffic flow through there. So that will change the entrance of that building probably a little bit. It's anticipated right now that it'll be in the middle of the building, and it would be in the back of the parking lot. So residents would park, because you want to try to have the shortest distance for the resident
Sure.
between, the elevator and their park.
Yeah, and I guess, an option, because you have that semicircle or the circular driveway, right there, like, that would, to me, if it would keep within the number of parking spots, that would be ideal green space, easy accessible for both buildings, for all the residents.
I'm not following you.
So
You mean
right-
take the parking lot out
Yeah.
that's
and just-
currently in there?
Yeah, and just
Can't do
grass
that.
it. You don't have enough?
Yeah,
Okay,
No, there's minimum parking requirements.
I understand
But,
that.
but I will say this, so to your point,
Yeah,
We have a mic?
You need the mic, Mr. Tessa.
just, what were you gonna look at, Joel?
just don't talk while you walk up there.
well, so, one of the things we do is to try to centralize the elevator so that the residents each are walking equally distanced down the hall, instead of putting it at one end where they're forced to walk, the furthest one has to walk all the way down the hall. So whether that happens in the front or the back is kind of irrelevant. We could have an entrance in the front and the back of the building, and this, space that you see there, which is all grass, could become green space. We're going to modify this slightly because we're going to pick up a turning radius and lose a couple of spots at the bottom. But I will also tell you that part of the recommendation was that this whole site is not as walkable as it could be for the residents that are already there, and even for the community at large. That it was brought up that out at 91, there's no sidewalk that takes you right up into the retail space. There was also a recommendation that, when we first proposed the building, we had requested that the parking wrap around the building so that we could get people out the north exit. It was determined that we shouldn't do that, and that we wanted an isolated pull-in for emergency access and fire vehicles on the other side. Now the recommendation has changed, and the thought process is, well, we would prefer to have a drive-through now, which is great, because that's what we originally wanted. And I think that alleviates some of the traffic problems there. But the point to all that is, it gives us the opportunity, if we do this, to improve some things that exist now that could work better. And one of them is, with sidewalks and crosswalks, and trying to create those pedestrian moments, maybe benches, areas that people can just, sit. Maybe it's not a pavilion, but it's a,
Just green space, opportunity, to your point, to sit, whether it's outside the retail, towards the west of the building.
I'll tell you what else we can do is, when we developed the sign program originally, we had a nice sign program for here that contemplated what retail would be in there, and how the street poles would act as, sign poles, banner poles, and things like that. If we do this and we know that we don't have those retailers in there, now they can switch over to what we typically do in our residential ones, which is all flower pots. So, now we can soften the streetscape out there and all the poles, and, once we know what we're dealing with, we can finally finish the development.
That's great.
Mrs. Killer?
Thank you.
Yes.
Just also let council know, the only thing you're really doing with this ordinance is amending the use. Planning and zoning has to do everything that you're asking for. It has to go back in front of planning and zoning for the site plan. The ingress egress was a recommendation of the fire department. If you see in the amendment, it is approving all requirements from the fire department, from the service director, from all the other disciplines that it has to meet, but it has to go back for everything that you're just asking for. Planning and zoning had that same concerns.
Yeah.
So the ingress egress along the back, you don't want the fire, we don't want to create what we created down here in front of the restaurant. That's why they are requesting that to connect, so we can have a way in and out of there better. So site plan will come back. And just so you know, part of the application for this application, it's $11.5 million build-out, which is $250,000 tax base for the school district. Understand what Mr. Lowry said, and I'm the same way. I prefer income tax, not property tax. But we're dealing with a specific site that is really limited, and whatever we can do to get this project wrapped up over there, I don't think it's going to hurt us on the what they're proposing, but there is a lot of site work that has to go yet.
And I will add one more thing. When you talk about the difference of, the limited to what can do, one of the challenges that we face is that, we are a medical office development developer. And so that's a large portion of what we do is MOBs. most of our medical office parks were 5 to 10,000 square foot buildings because a 5,000 square foot building was traditionally a one office practice, maybe two physician practice, and then the larger practices were 10,000, just kind of how the market worked. Now what's happening is the hospitals are bringing those on campus, and in fact, we have long-term leases that they're not renewing in buildings all over the place. In fact, we've been selling off a lot of them because as the medical community changes, the desire to have a hospital system buy a private practice, let them maintain their location, has stopped. So now what you're seeing is the hospitals are going out and doing much larger buildings, so, like we did next door, so that they can combine disciplines. So, children's, we've developed probably the majority of all of children's medical office space. And now they're pulling out of all of our single buildings, and we're building, like we just did in Boston Heights, 35,000 square foot facilities. So that site for an MOB has become functionally obsolete. There aren't people building 7,500 square foot, medical office buildings like the one we got approved anymore. So,
Okay. Just a question for the law director. Within the ordinance that was amended, it has on here with the third whereas, the applicant and owner wishes to modify the site plan as pertained to Phase 1 by converting 20,400 square feet of vacant commercial/retail space into 15 additional apartment units. And Mr. Testa has just indicated that that is going to be 14.
correct.
Do we need to make a revision within this ordinance?
That's in the whereas section, so that doesn't have to be that specific as long
Okay.
as it's in the ball, it's
Okay.
it's substantially similar and there's
Okay.
not some major deviation. And again, these are all contingent on them coming back, so if it's
Right.
something minor like that, you don't have to. If you want to, you can. I mean, you
Okay.
can add that as another amendment to this ordinance tonight if you'd like.
Okay.
If Mr. Testa is positive that's the direction they're going.
Yes, positive. Did it today.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Sisak.
I move to amend ordinance 2022-85 at this time.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend ordinance 2022-85. Is there any further discussion? Okay, clerk, please call the roll.
Craig Ciesick,
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Adam Bozick,
Now,
Mary Getman,
Yes.
Carol Kilway,
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Okay, you have your amendment right now. It'll come back to us for third reading, and we'll have more discussion in 2 weeks, okay?
I'll speak more intelligently then.
You did great. Thank you so much. I
Thanks.
appreciate it. Okay, anything else to come in front of planning and zoning at this time? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll close committee. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. Are we good to go? No one needs a break? Good to push through? All right, let's start going. Moving to finance, Mr. Ciesick.
Thank you. I'd like to call finance to order. We currently have first reading of ordinances and resolutions. We have ordinance 2023-12. It's authorizing the Director of Public Service to negotiate and the mayor to contract for various policies of insurance for the city and providing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Sisak,
Madam Chair.
move to adopt ordinance 2023-12 at first reading due to the fact that it is housekeeping.
Second.
So a motion, a second, to adopt ordinance 2023-12. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Ciesick?
Yes.
Just for the public that is here, and then for the public that is also watching, they're going to wonder why we're going rapid fire on these ordinances. But these are all housekeeping ordinances that we're doing this on, so I just wanted to state that for the record.
Thank you.
Mr. President, just to clarify that, in case somebody's wondering, what does that mean, housekeeping? Could you provide a little explanation, just so the public could?
In general, it would be bids, contracts that probably have a long lead time that we need to get stuff ordered right away on, and/or material that the service department needs to continue doing work and also to plan for the projects ahead.
And this is all already
And
budgeted.
these are all budgeted,
All
and these
budgeted.
are also annual, like.
Right.
Thank you.
Contractual.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Getman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes. Ordinance 2023-12 is passed by a vote of 7-0. We also have ordinance 2023-16. It's authorizing the mayor to enter into the necessary contract or resolution for the city's participation in the ODOT Cooperative Purchasing Program and providing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Sisak.
Yes, ma'am.
I move to adopt ordinance 2023-16 at first reading, again, due to the fact that it is a housekeeping issue.
Second.
So a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Jonathan Bolus,
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-16 has been passed by a vote of 7-0. Ordinance 2023-17, it's expressing intent to sell unneeded, obsolete, or unfit municipal personal property, including but not limited to vehicles and equipment, by internet and auto auction in calendar year 2023, and providing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Sisak.
Yes, ma'am.
I move to adopt ordinance 2023-17 at first reading, again, due to housekeeping issues.
Second.
So a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 2023-17. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-17 has been passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have Resolution 2023-1. It's authorizing the Portage County Auditor to advance payment of local taxes collected for the 2022 tax year payable in 2023 and providing for immediate enactment.
Move to adopt.
Second.
So a motion is second to adopt Resolution 2023-1. Is there any discussion? Madam-
Anything special about this, Mrs. Gilbride?
No, this just allows the auditors to forward us the property tax collections as they receive them instead of waiting till the final settlement.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Resolution 2023-1 has been approved by a vote of 7-0. We also have Resolution 2023-2. It's authorizing the Summit County Fiscal Officer to advance payment of local taxes collected for the 2022 tax year payable in 2023 and providing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Sisak.
Yes, ma'am.
Move for the adoption of resolution 2023-2 at first reading.
Second.
So a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2023-2. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Ordinance or Resolution 2023-2 has been adopted by a vote of 7-0. Is there anything else to come before the Finance Committee this evening? Hearing none, I will close committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ciesick. Personnel, Mr. Bolus.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening. Call Personnel Committee to order. We are all present, have no legislation this evening. Does anyone have any comments or questions or input for Personnel Committee this evening? I just wanted to say thank you for the invitation to review the study with Clemens Nelson that took place on January 5th, and I look forward to the follow-up. Anything? All right. Thank you. I close Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Bolus. Community Issues, Safety, Mrs. Gutman.
Thank you, Mr. Lowry. I will call Community Issues and Safety to order. We have nothing before us tonight. Does anyone have anything for the committee?
Mrs. Gutman?
Yes, Mr.
And
Lowry.
this just struck me when we did our calendar for Halloween, that meeting.
Yes.
We, there was some discussion on whether or not we were going to continue to keep Halloween on that Thursday or discuss moving it to the Saturday like some other communities. But I'm guessing in light of us moving that meeting, the intent was to keep it on the Thursday.
Mr. Lowry, I
That's
don't,
correct.
I think there's lots of opportunity to maybe change it. We're 10 months away, so.
I know, it just struck me.
I know for the parents, it would probably be beneficial to have it on a Saturday.
my intent is to have the discussion, but perhaps not in January. Maybe we'll wait until February and have that discussion.
Put
But
that
I
on.
think we should, and I think surveying the community in some format would be a good, my initial thought was to maybe go through the schools somehow to do a survey because they're the most affected. But again, we can talk about it at a meeting with a
Thank
little
you.
less.
Maybe also with the Community Expo coming up, that would be actually a good time to have a survey.
Oh, yes, very good idea.
Great idea.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Anything else to come before the committee? Okay, seeing none, I'll close committee.
Thank you very much. Safety, Mr. Bozick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I open the Safety Committee. We currently have first reading of resolution in front of us in ordinance 2023-18, authorizing the mayor to enter into contract for the purchase of 2 heart monitors without competitive bidding and providing for immediate enactment. As we sit here, I'm thinking about Chris Farley's Newt Gingrich impersonation as he breezes through the legislation, if you've ever seen that. So, but I'm remiss, Mr. Mayor, I believe you would like to speak about this particular.
Yes, I apologize, I didn't ask for it earlier,
Yes.
but if we can get first reading and adoption, this was a budgeted item, but it is a sole source budget item that the law department put that legislation together. Since we have the monitors that are the same on different squads, we're not getting rid of all of them, so we'd like to be consistent of the unit that the guys are using. So they pick one up, they're using the same one no matter what, and I think Molly's gonna make a comment.
And also, we're asking for first reading because if we get this passed, we'll lock in before the price increase in February.
Yes.
Yes. So,
Mr. Bozick?
yes.
Move to adopt ordinance 2023-18 at first.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Well, I have a question. I guess my question for clarity is, without the competitive bid, is there an opportunity to bid the physio control heart monitors, or is it just not an effective means to obtain them?
No, at this point, the manufacturer's the only supplier.
I
That's why
gotcha.
they're the single
Okay.
source.
All right, I
And that
understand.
falls under that exception.
I gotcha.
Because of that.
Okay.
They previously had been part of state purchasing. They decided not to participate in state purchasing, which
Understood.
was how we had
That
secured
was
them
going to be my
previously.
next question
Thank
was,
you.
is there no one that has that as part of their state purchasing?
Used
So-
to, not anymore.
Okay, understood.
And
Yep.
that's why the switch over to them.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes?
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolas.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
All right, we have a passing of ordinance 2023-18 by a vote of 7-0. Do we have anything else to come before the Safety Committee this evening? Hearing none, I will close committee.
Thank you, Mr. Bozick. You ready to get to work, Mrs. Ullman?
Let's go.
Yes.
Public Service, Mrs. Ullman.
I call a Public Service Committee to order. We have ordinance 2023-1, authorizing the Director of Public Service to advertise for bids and the mayor to enter into contract for pavement maintenance and providing for immediate enactment.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Is there any discussion?
Same thing for those that may be streaming, housekeeping.
Thank you.
I have one question for Mr. President. Is it within council's rules to do a mass approval of all ordinances in front of us?
Well, to my chagrin, I've been trying to get a consent agenda approved for about 30 years here, and have not been able to get that done. So It is not within council rules as we speak tonight.
Is that something that we can approve this evening within council rules, or is that something that has to be
No,
passed?
that should be looked at as
Okay.
a council rule revamp or update. And
Understood. Thank you.
Can we suspend the council rules?
we are not. Maybe legally we could, but we are not. Mrs. Rayburn and I need to discuss.
This is only half of the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was very nice.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-1 has passed 7-0. Next, we have ordinance 2023-2, authorizing the Director of Public Service to advertise for bids and the mayor to enter into a contract for pavement marking and providing for immediate enactment.
Mrs. Ullman?
Yes.
I move to adopt ordinance 2023-2.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-2 has passed 7-0. Next, we have ordinance 2023-3, authorizing the Director of Public Service to advertise and solicit bids and the mayor to enter into a contract for concrete projects on public property and providing for immediate enactment.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
move to adopt ordinance 2023-3 at first reading.
Second.
Is there discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes. Ordinance 2023-3 has passed 7-0. Ordinance 2023-4, authorizing the Director of Public Service to advertise for bids and the mayor to award a contract for temporary labor and providing for immediate enactment.
Mrs.
Madam
Ullman?
Chair.
Yes.
Move to adopt ordinance 2023-4 at first reading.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-4 has passed 7-0. Ordinance 2023-5, authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Prime AE Group, Inc. for general traffic engineering and consulting services for various streets and projects and other general engineering services and providing for immediate enactment.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
move to adopt ordinance 2023-5 at first reading.
Second.
Is there discussion?
Yes, question. Is this tied in any way to the thoroughfare plan?
We look at it, but it's not directly tied.
Okay, right, but this is not tied to the update of the thoroughfare plan. This is just for other things, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-5 has passed 7-0. Next is ordinance 2023-6, authorizing the mayor to contract with CT Consultants for engineering and consulting services relating to water system development and other general engineering services and providing for immediate enactment.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move to adopt ordinance 2023-6 at first reading.
Second.
Is there discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-6 has passed 7-0. Next, ordinance 2023-7, authorizing the mayor to contract with Burgess and Nyepel, Inc. for engineering and consulting services relating to water system development, general engineering services, and planning and zoning consulting, and providing for immediate enactment.
Mrs. Ullman?
Yes.
Move to adopt ordinance 2023-7 at first reading.
Second.
Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-7 has passed 7-0. Next, we have ordinance 2023-8, authorizing the mayor to contract with GPD Group for general engineering and consulting services and providing for immediate enactment.
Mrs. Ullman?
Yes.
Move to adopt ordinance 2023-8 at first reading.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just had a question. What were I apologize, my system crashed here. What are the consulting services being referred to in this ordinance?
That's engineering,
Just
general engineering, it's GPD.
nothing specific at this, okay. Again, I can't open my detail. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-8 has passed 7-0. Ordinance 2023-9, authorizing the mayor to contract with Brandstetter Carroll, Inc. for engineering and consulting services relating to parks and recreation design and engineering and providing for immediate enactment.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-9 has passed 7-0. Ordinance 2023-10, authorizing the mayor to contract with DMS Water Solutions Company LLC for engineering and consulting services relating to water system development and other general engineering services and providing for immediate enactment.
Mrs. Ullman?
Yes.
Move to adopt ordinance 2023-10 at first reading.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes. Ordinance 2023-10 has passed 7-0. Ordinance 2023-11, authorizing the Ohio Director of Transportation to complete the mowing of IR 76 within the city limits and providing for immediate enactment.
Mrs. Ullman?
Yes.
Move to adopt ordinance 2023-11 at first reading.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Adam Bozick.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Craig Ciesick.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-11 has passed 7-0. Ordinance 2023-13, authorizing the mayor to enter into the necessary contract or resolution for the purchase of salt and salt brine through the ODOT Cooperative Purchasing Program and other intergovernmental purchasing programs and providing for immediate enactment.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, real quick.
Okay.
Do we have enough salt in the domes?
Yes.
Okay. And do you happen to know offhand what the rate is right now?
Next meeting, I'll get that.
Thank you.
It's in the $50 range.
Oh, that's not bad.
55, I think it's
Compared to where we've been,
55
that's
something.
okay. Yeah.
Through one contract.
Through one contract?
The other
Okay.
one's higher.
That's what we just paid.
Okay.
Madam,
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
For Mr. Rohr. I know at one point, since we're on the subject of salt, you and I were having a discussion about alternate locations for an additional salt dome. Has that been discussed within administration to?
It's always discussed, but it just hasn't moved any forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Are you thinking the DD site?
One site we've always talked about is the old Tallmadge asphalt site that we own, but it's down Monroe and the single lane bridge, and the salt dome in Monroe Falls is right down the road the other way.
An alternate site would be great, because the trucks come back empty, and so they lose all their weight, and so it becomes an issue. So why not salt going both directions, was the thought of an alternate dome. I mean, it makes sense, because now you're light heading back, so it becomes a safety issue. Because the trucks are heavy front-ended, the engine and the plows on the front and the back has no weight once the salt disappears.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mary Beckman?
Yes.
Carol Kilway?
Yes.
Dennis Lowry?
Yes.
Craig Ciesick?
Yes.
Becky Allman?
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus?
Yes.
Adam Bozak?
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-13 has passed 7-0. Ordinance 2023-14, authorizing the Director of Public Service to advertise for bids and the mayor to enter into a contract for chip sealing of parking lots and providing for immediate enactment.
Mrs. Ullman,
Yes,
move to adopt ordinance 2023-14.
Second.
thank
I
you.
own the ordinance.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a question for Mr. Rohr. Again, you know how I stand on chip sealing.
You love it.
Yeah, it's my least favorite thing. Do you have a particular area in mind that you're going to be doing this?
No, just in case we need something done in the existing parking lots, that's
Okay.
all. There's
Understood.
nothing out there.
It's my least favorite. So, agreed. Yes, I see a lot of agreement. Perhaps we turn this down.
It is a great product
It is.
for emergency type use.
I like it.
I don't have a problem with it.
Me either.
Not talking about potatoes.
I like it too.
It's inexpensive.
That's why I like it,
inexpensive.
yeah.
And it works.
It holds up.
works.
We got a great machine that fills potholes kind of similarly.
Similar, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
The Durapatch machine's the
That's
same
it.
product.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Carol Kilway?
Yes.
Dennis Lowry?
Yes.
Craig Ciesick?
Yes.
Becky Allman?
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus?
Yes.
Adam Bozak?
Yes.
Mary Gutman?
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-14 has passed 7-0. Ordinance 2023-15, authorizing the Director of Public Service to advertise for bids and the mayor to award a contract for trucking and hauling and providing for immediate enactment.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Dennis Lowry?
Yes.
Craig Ciesick?
Yes.
Becky Allman?
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus?
Yes.
Adam Bozak?
Yes.
Mary Gutman?
Yes.
Carol Kilway?
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-15 has passed 7-0.
Thank you 14 times.
You're not allowed to do that.
Is there anything else for the Public Service Committee? I close committee.
Thank you very much. Great job. Item 11, reports of special committees. The only thing we have regarding council operations is that Mr. Bolus will be working with Mr. Delaney on coordinating the purchasing and the installation of the TVs, correct?
Yep. I've reached out to Dove and the IT department, so, which, where they're referring to the installation of the new monitors, as well as the wireless mics. So hopefully we'll have those soon so that speakers can come up and present if they wish to do so.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Any announcements? All right. Thank you for working so hard, everybody, tonight. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bozick and second by Mr. Bolus. Mrs. Burton, please call the roll.
Craig Ciesick?
Yes.
Becky Allman?
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus?
Yes.
Adam Bozak?
Yes.
Mary Gutman?
Yes.
Carol Kilway?
Yes.
Dennis Lowry?
Yes, it is 9:04 when we are adjourned. Great job tonight.